Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth exploration vessel Curiosity had seen many strange things during her decade of deep space exploration, but nothing quite prepared her for the sight currently filling her bridge's main view screen. The massive alien vessel before them looked like what would happen if a brutalist architect had been asked to design a cathedral in space. All harsh angles and imposing spires, painted in what could only be described as the most aggressive shade of purple she'd ever seen. "Are you seeing this?" she asked her first officer, Commander James O'Neill, who was squinting at the sensor readings with an expression that suggested he wasn't quite sure whether to be impressed or concerned. "If you mean the space-going Gothic cathedral that looks like it raided a cosmic paint store, then yes, ma'am, I'm seeing it," O'Neill replied, maintaining his characteristic dry humor, even in the face of humanity's first contact with an advanced alien civilization. The massive vessel had appeared seemingly out of nowhere at the edge of the Tau-Ceti system, where the Curiosity and its sister ship Persistence had been conducting routine survey operations. Initial scans showed technology far beyond anything humanity had achieved, yet there was something almost comically overdramatic about its design. "Opening hailing frequencies," announced Lieutenant Maria Santos, the communications officer, her fingers dancing across her holographic interface. "Channel established." "They're responding." The view screen flickered, and Sarah found herself face to face with what appeared to be a tall, humanoid figure wrapped in so many layers of ornate robes and decorative armor that it looked like it might topple over at any moment. Its skin was a pale lavender, and its eyes, all four of them, blinked in perfect synchronization. "Behold," the alien announced in a voice that seemed deliberately pitched to sound profound. "You stand in the presence of Grand Executor Vaxthalion of the Axorian Empire, sovereign of the Thousand Suns, master of the cosmic winds, and," the alien paused for dramatic effect, "Level 3 certified public accountant." Sarah bit her lip hard enough to draw blood, desperately trying to maintain her composure. O'Neill made a strange choking sound beside her. "I welcome you, Grand Executor," Sarah managed, fighting to keep her voice steady. "I am Captain Sarah Chen of the Earth exploration vessel Curiosity. We come in peace and friendship." "Peace." Vaxthalion's upper set of eyes narrowed while the lower set widened, an expression Sarah couldn't begin to interpret. "You dare to offer mere peace to the Axorian Empire, we who have conquered galaxies, we who have bent the very fabric of space-time to our will, we who have successfully implemented a galaxy-wide standardized filing system for tax returns." At this point, O'Neill lost his battle with composure and let out a snort that he quickly tried to disguise as a cough. "Sorry," he wheezed. "Space allergies." The Grand Executor's face turned a deeper shade of purple. "You find something amusing, primitive creature." "No, no," O'Neill assured him, still fighting for control. "Just deeply impressed by your filing system." "As well you should be," Vaxthalion declared, apparently missing the sarcasm entirely. "It took 17 cycles and 3 civil wars to agree on the proper tab spacing." Sarah shot O'Neill a warning look before addressing the alien again. "Grand Executor, we're honored to make your acquaintance. Perhaps we could discuss cultural exchange." "Cultural exchange," Vaxthalion interrupted. "The Axorian Empire does not exchange culture. We bestow it. Prepare yourselves, humans, for you shall be enlightened by our superior ways, starting with proper form-filling etiquette and the sacred art of bureaucratic procedure." Before Sarah could respond, another voice cut in from off-screen. "Sir, the humans' vessel." "Yes. What about it?" Vaxthalion demanded. "Well, sir, according to our scans, they've named it Curiosity." "And?" "Sir, you remember the briefing about that Earth probe from their early space age? The one they named Curiosity that just kept going, far beyond its expected operational parameters." For the first time, Vaxthalion's theatrical demeanor cracked slightly. "Surely you don't mean—" "Yes, sir. These are the same humans, the ones who built a robot that was supposed to last 90 days, and it just refused to die. For over 50 years. A long silence followed this announcement, broken only by what sounded suspiciously like someone in the Curiosity's engineering section whistling "Still Alive" from that ancient video game about a homicidal AI. "I see," Vaxthalion said finally, his voice notably less bombastic. "And the other vessel with you?" "The Persistence, named after another of those same types of rovers, sir," the off-screen voice supplied helpfully. "The one they landed on their fourth planet by flying it through the atmosphere hanging from a rocket-powered crane because, and I quote from their historical records, it seemed like a cool idea." The Grand Executor's 4 eyes blinked rapidly in succession. "These are the beings who threw perfectly good robots at their planets just to see what would happen, and then somehow made it work." "The same, sir. And now they've achieved faster-than-light travel." "Yes, sir. Using a method our scientists are still trying to understand. Something about taking advantage of a rounding error in the universe's physics calculations." Vaxthalion turned back to the screen, regarding Sarah and her crew with what might have been a new expression of respect, or possibly indigestion. Alien facial expressions were tricky that way. "Captain Chen," he said, his voice now carrying the hint of uncertainty, "perhaps we should discuss this cultural exchange you mentioned over refreshments. I have some excellent forms we could fill out over tea." Sarah smiled diplomatically, even as she heard O'Neill mutter something about space bureaucrats under his breath. "We would be delighted, Grand Executor. Though I should warn you, you might find our human tea parties a bit unconventional." As arrangements were made for the historic first meeting between humans and Exorians, Sarah couldn't help but wonder what the Grand Executor would make of the time-honored Earth diplomatic tradition of ordering pizza during late-night negotiation sessions. Something told her the galaxy was about to get a lot more interesting, and possibly a lot more efficient, once humanity introduced the concept of good enough for government work to the Exorian Empire's perfect filing system. After all, if there was one thing humans excelled at, it was finding the humor in the absurd and the shortcuts in the supposedly perfect. The universe, it seemed, wasn't quite ready for humanity's unique approach to problem-solving. But it was definitely about to get a crash course in it. The conference room aboard the Exorian flagship Bureaucratic Excellence had clearly been designed to intimidate. The walls were covered in what appeared to be framed certificates and commendations, all written in painfully precise calligraphy. The table was an immense slab of something that looked like obsidian, but was probably much more expensive, and each chair came equipped with its own personal holographic display for document review. Captain Sarah Chen sat at one end of this impressive table, trying not to smile as she watched Grand Executor Vaxthalion attempt to process the concept of a pizza party being proposed by her diplomatic team. "Let me ensure I understand this correctly," Vaxthalion said, all 4 eyes focused on the holographic image of a pepperoni pizza floating above the table. "You wish to begin our historic diplomatic negotiations by consuming circular portions of processed grain products topped with fermented dairy excretions and preserved meat products. Don't forget the tomato sauce," Commander O'Neill added helpfully. "Technically a fruit, by the way." The Grand Executor's assistant, a younger Exorian named Kix who seemed slightly more adaptable to human eccentricities, made a notation on his datapad. "Sir, our xenobiologists confirm that while unusual, all components are safe for Exorian consumption, though they recommend against the extra spicy option." "That's not the point," Vaxthalion declared, his robes rustling dramatically as he gestured. "There are procedures, protocols. A proper first contact negotiation should begin with no less than 17 rounds of formal introductions, followed by the ceremonial exchange of bureaucratic credentials. We could do that, Sarah conceded diplomatically. But in our experience, people tend to be more honest and open when they're sharing a meal. It's a human tradition that dates back thousands of years. Besides, Lieutenant Santos chimed in from her position near the door. Have you ever tried to read legal documents on an empty stomach? It's torture. This seemed to give Vaxthalion pause. You raise an interesting point. Our own legal scholars do tend to get rather irritable during extended filing sessions. Then it's settled, O'Neill said cheerfully. Pizza it is, and while we wait for delivery, which, by the way, is going to make some delivery pilot's entire career, maybe we could exchange some cultural information. You know, break the ice a bit. Break the ice, Kix asked, frantically consulting his translation database. Are we expected to engage in some form of ritualistic frozen water destruction? It's just an expression, Sarah explained. It means to get to know each other in a casual way. Ah, like our ceremonial 7-hour recitation of administrative achievements. Vaxthalion brightened considerably. More like sharing stories, Sarah suggested quickly, before they could be subjected to what sounded like the galaxy's most boring marathon. For instance, would you like to hear about how humans first achieved faster-than-light travel? All four of Vaxthalion's eyes focused intently on her. Yes, we are particularly interested in this rounding error method your species employed. Our scientists are still trying to understand how it doesn't violate several fundamental laws of physics. Well, O'Neill began, grinning. It all started when one of our physicists was playing an old video game and noticed something weird about how the game engine handled physics calculations. What followed was a story that had the Exorians alternating between horror and fascination as they learned how humanity had essentially found a bug in the universe's programming and exploited it to achieve FTL travel. By the time O'Neill got to the part about the test pilot's famous first words upon successful FTL transit, oops, it actually worked. Even Vaxthalion had abandoned some of his rigid formality. So you're telling us, Kix summarized, his voice a mixture of awe and concern, that your species achieved one of the greatest scientific breakthroughs in history because someone was bored at work and decided to apply video game physics to actual spacetime. Pretty much, Sarah confirmed. We find that some of our best innovations come from people asking what if at exactly the wrong, or right, moment. But what about the proper channels? Vaxthalion sputtered. The research proposals, the grant applications, the peer review process. Oh, we did all that too, O'Neill assured him. We just did it after we knew it would work. Much easier to get funding when you can show them a spaceship that's already broken the light barrier. Before the Grand Executor could respond to this flagrant violation of proper procedure, a nervous-looking junior officer entered the conference room. Sir, the human food delivery vessel is approaching. But, sir, yes? What is it? They're playing something called music on all frequencies, something about a Pizza Time remix, and, sir, some of our junior crew members have begun moving rhythmically in response. Dancing, Sarah supplied helpfully. Another human tradition. First you violate physics, Vaxthalion muttered. And now you're corrupting my crew with your infectious rhythms and circular food items. But there was something in his tone that suggested he wasn't entirely displeased. I don't suppose. That is, would it be a serious breach of protocol to request what humans call extra cheese? Not at all, Sarah assured him, mentally noting that the path to intergalactic peace might just be paved with pizza and pop music. Though I feel I should warn you about another human tradition called garlic bread. As the historic first pizza party in Exorian space got underway, Sarah couldn't help but notice that some of the younger Exorian officers were starting to bob their heads to the delivery pilot's music. More surprisingly, she caught Vaxthalion tapping one of his feet under the table, though he quickly stopped when he noticed her looking. Perhaps, she thought, watching O'Neill attempt to explain the concept of stuffed crust to an increasingly intrigued group of alien bureaucrats, the galaxy wasn't quite ready for humanity's particular brand of chaos. But it was certainly starting to look like it might be more fun with humans around. Grand Executor Vaxthalion burst into the Joint Human Exorian Command Center with such dramatic flair that his ceremonial robes created a small breeze. His normally purple complexion had shifted to something closer to mauve, a sign of extreme agitation that Captain Sarah Chen had learned to recognize over the past few weeks of diplomatic relations. "Captain Chen," he announced, all four eyes wide with alarm. "We have intercepted what appears to be a massive coordinated military broadcast from Earth." Sarah looked up from where she'd been reviewing trade proposals with Commander O'Neill. "Military broadcast? That doesn't sound right. What exactly did you intercept?" Vaxthalion gestured, and a holographic display sprang to life in the center of the room. Immediately, the space was filled with rapid-fire images and sounds that made Sarah close her eyes and suppress a groan. "Is that TikTok?" O'Neill asked, failing to hide his amusement. "We have decoded multiple encrypted channels," Vaxthalion continued, either missing or ignoring O'Neill's recognition. "They appear to be showing coordinated human movements, often synchronized to rhythmic audio patterns. Our analysts believe these may be combat training exercises disguised as entertainment." Sarah watched as the display showed a montage of viral dance challenges, memes, and what appeared to be someone's grandmother absolutely crushing a choreographed dance routine. "Grand Executor," she began carefully, "these aren't military broadcasts. They're social media posts, entertainment, people sharing funny videos and dances with each other." "Impossible," Kix declared from behind his superior, frantically scrolling through data on his pad. "The sheer volume of these transmissions suggests a coordinated effort. And look at the repetition of movements. Clearly, these are coded instructions for some form of mass mobilization." "Yeah, that's just how memes work," O'Neill explained. "Someone does something funny or cool, and other people copy it because it's fun." "Fun." Vaxthalion repeated the word as if it were written in ancient Sumerian. "You expect us to believe that millions of your species spontaneously decide to perform identical actions, set them to music, and broadcast them across your information networks, for fun?" "Well, when you put it that way, it does sound a bit weird," Sarah admitted. "But yes, that's exactly what happens. Though I suppose I should warn you about something called cat videos before your analysts stumble across those." "Too late," Kix muttered. "We have an entire division trying to understand why humans spend so much time documenting the activities of small predatory mammals. Current leading theory suggests they might be some form of biological surveillance drones." O'Neill choked on his coffee. "But what about these?" Vaxthalion waved his hand, and the display changed to show a series of image macros. Memes featuring various screenshots from historical events with humorous captions. These appear to be some form of psychological warfare, using historical imagery combined with cryptic messages. Sarah spent the next hour attempting to explain the concept of meme culture to increasingly bewildered Axorian intelligence officers. The breaking point came when she had to explain why humans found it hilarious to put ridiculous captions on pictures of cats. "Let me understand this correctly," Vaxthalion said, rubbing his temple ridges. "Your species takes images of various subjects, adds text that often has no logical connection to the image itself, shares these creations widely, and this somehow becomes a form of communication that spreads across your entire information network." "Pretty much," Sarah confirmed. "Though you're overthinking it a bit. Sometimes things are funny precisely because they don't make sense." "Nonsense as communication," Kix murmured, making notes. "Chaos as entertainment. Sir, I'm beginning to understand why their FTL drive works the way it does." "Hey," O'Neill protested. "The physics exploitation drive is perfectly logical. Mostly. We're pretty sure." Before the conversation could devolve further, a new alert sounded. Another Axorian officer rushed in, looking distinctly uncomfortable. "Sir," the officer addressed Vaxthalion, "we've detected a new trend in the human broadcasts, something called a space Karen meme. Featuring. Featuring what?" "Well, sir, it appears to be based on your first contact speech. The one about the filing system." Sarah and O'Neill exchanged alarmed glances as Vaxthalion's color shifted through several interesting shades of purple. To their surprise, however, the Grand Executor's response was not the explosion they expected. "Show me," he commanded. The display changed to show a series of memes featuring a stylized version of Vaxthalian's first contact speech, complete with dramatic effects and increasingly absurd captions about bureaucracy in space. To everyone's shock, after studying them for a long moment, the Grand Executor made a strange sound that took them several seconds to identify as laughter. "They've captured my ceremonial robes quite accurately," he observed, pointing to one particular image. "Though I believe my dramatic pause was slightly longer in the actual speech." "Sir?" Kix asked, clearly concerned that his superior had finally cracked under the strain of dealing with humans. "Oh, come now, Kix," Vaxthalian said, still chuckling. "After 3 weeks of attempting to understand human culture, I've come to one inescapable conclusion. If you can't beat them, you might as well join them. Besides," he added with what might have been a wink, it was hard to tell with 4 eyes, "wait until they see the internal memes from our last Imperial tax audit." "You have bureaucratic memes?" Sarah asked, fascinated. "Captain," Vaxthalian replied with dignity, "we have an entire subdivision dedicated to proper meme filing and categorization. We may be bureaucrats, but we're not boring bureaucrats." Sarah and O'Neill exchanged alarmed glances as Vaxthalian's color shifted through several interesting shades of purple. To their surprise, however, the Grand Executor's response was not the explosion they expected. "Show me," he commanded. The display changed to show a series of memes featuring a stylized version of Vaxthalian's first contact speech, complete with dramatic effects and increasingly absurd captions about bureaucracy in space. To everyone's shock, after studying them for a long moment, the Grand Executor made a strange sound that took them several seconds to identify as laughter. "They've captured my ceremonial robes quite accurately," he observed, pointing to one particular image. "Though I believe my dramatic pause was slightly longer in the actual speech." "Sir?" Kix asked, clearly concerned that his superior had finally cracked under the strain of dealing with humans. "Oh, come now, Kix," Vaxthalian said, still chuckling. "After 3 weeks of attempting to understand human culture, I've come to one inescapable conclusion. If you can't beat them, you might as well join them. Besides," he added with what might have been a wink, it was hard to tell with 4 eyes, "wait until they see the internal memes from our last Imperial tax audit." "You have bureaucratic memes?" Sarah asked, fascinated. "Captain," Vaxthalian replied with dignity, "we have an entire subdivision dedicated to proper meme filing and categorization. We may be bureaucrats, but we're not boring bureaucrats." As the humans and Exorians began sharing their respective cultures' collection of bureaucracy-themed humor, Sarah reflected that perhaps the galaxy's greatest misunderstandings could be solved with a combination of laughter and an appreciation for the absurd. Though she did make a mental note to warn Earth's social media companies about the incoming flood of meticulously categorized alien memes. The alert came during what had become a weekly tradition aboard the bureaucratic excellence, Pizza and Meme Friday. Captain Sarah Chin was in the middle of explaining the concept of dad jokes to an increasingly perplexed group of Exorian cultural analysts when every screen in the command center suddenly flashed red. "Multiple unknown vessels detected at the edge of the system," Kix announced, his usual methodical demeanor giving way to urgency. "Configuration unknown. They're not responding to standard identification protocols." Grand Executor Vaxthalian straightened in his command chair, his robes settling into what Sarah had come to think of as their serious business configuration. "Show me." The holographic display shifted to show a cluster of ships unlike anything Sarah had seen before. Where Exorian vessels were all elegant angles and human ships tended toward practical functionality, these craft seemed to defy conventional geometry. They twisted and shifted as she watched, their surfaces rippling like liquid metal. "Well," O'Neill commented from beside her, "those definitely aren't from around here." "Analysis," Vaxthalian demanded. "Sir, One of the Axorian officers reported, "The vessels appear to be phase-shifting. They're operating partially out of sync with normal spacetime." "That's not supposed to be possible," Sarah muttered, then caught herself. "Though I suppose we did break physics with a rounding error, so who am I to judge?" The unknown ships continued their advance into the system, ignoring all attempts at communication. Their movements were eerily coordinated, like the components of a single organism rather than individual vessels. "Sir," Kix called out, his voice tense, "they're launching something. Multiple objects, on an intercept course with both our ships and the human vessels." "Defensive positions," Vaxthalion ordered. "Standard protocol dictates." "Begging your pardon, Grand Executor," O'Neill interrupted, studying the sensor readings, "but I don't think standard protocol is going to cut it here. Those things they're launching, they're phase-shifting too. They'll pass right through conventional shields." "Then what do you suggest, Commander? We cannot simply—" "Actually," Sarah cut in, "an idea forming. Maybe we can. Lieutenant Santos, remember that glitch we found in the FTL drive's phase alignment system? The one that kept making the coffee machines run backwards in time?" Santos' eyes lit up with understanding. "The temporal harmonic feedback loop. Captain, that's brilliant. But we'd need a way to amplify it significantly." "Perhaps," Vaxthalion said slowly, "we could assist with that. Our ship's crystalline matrices are designed to amplify and focus energy patterns." "Sir," Kix protested, "the regulations clearly state that any modifications to core systems must be submitted in triplicate and reviewed by no less than 7 committees." "Kix," Vaxthalion replied with dignity, "I believe this situation calls for what the humans refer to as YOLOing it." What followed was perhaps the strangest battle plan ever conceived in 2 galaxies. The Axorian ships arranged themselves in a precise geometric pattern, their crystalline structures humming with power. The human vessels positioned themselves at calculated points within the formation, their jury-rigged FTL drives purposefully misaligned to generate a specific type of temporal feedback. "This is either going to be really impressive," O'Neill commented as they made the final adjustments, "or really embarrassing." "Approaching vessels now within weapons range," Kix reported. "Their phase-shifted projectiles air." He paused, checking his readings. "Sir, they appear to be laughing." "What?" Sarah and Vaxthalion asked simultaneously. "The unknown vessels are transmitting some form of signal. Our translators are having difficulty, but it seems to be expressions of amusement." The mystery was solved moments later when their combined temporal feedback loop collided with the phase-shifted vessels. Instead of the devastating defense they'd hoped for, the interaction produced something entirely unexpected. It transformed the entire battlefield into what could only be described as a cosmic light show, complete with what appeared to be spontaneously generated dance music. The unknown vessels froze in place, their liquid metal surfaces reflecting the impromptu disco inferno surrounding them. Then, to everyone's surprise, they began to pulse in time with the beat. "Are they dancing?" Santos asked incredulously. "Incoming transmission," Kix announced. Well, sir, you should probably hear this yourself." A voice filled the command center, speaking in what sounded like wind chimes being run through an auto-tune processor. "This is the collective consciousness of the quantum drift. We apologize for the dramatic entrance. We were testing your species' response to perceived threats. We must say, turning a potential battle into an impromptu dance party is a response we've never encountered before." "Most impressive." Sarah and Vaxthalion exchanged glances. "You were testing us?" Sarah asked. "Indeed. We monitor developing interspatial relationships for signs of compatibility with higher dimensional social structures. Your combined solution to our simulated attack demonstrates both technological creativity and a refreshing ability to generate unexpected outcomes. Also, this beat is, as you might say, pretty sick." "So," O'Neill summarized, We just turned a first contact situation with a higher dimensional species into a rave by accident. There are no accidents, the quantum drift replied, their ship still pulsing with the rhythm. Only opportunities for spontaneous dance parties. We would very much like to establish diplomatic relations with your combined cultures. Your ability to transform conflict into celebration suggests you may be ready for introduction to the greater galactic community. Though we do have one question. Yes, Vaxthalion prompted. This pizza we're detecting aboard your vessel, is it customary to share it at diplomatic functions? Our quantum sensors indicate it contains something called pepperoni that we find intriguing. As arrangements were made to expand their weekly pizza party to include entities that existed partially outside normal spacetime, Sarah couldn't help but smile. Somehow, humanity's knack for turning serious situations into something unexpectedly entertaining had combined with Exorian precision to create something entirely new. You realize, she murmured to Vaxthalion, we're going to have to file paperwork about this. Indeed, he replied, watching as the quantum drift ships performed what appeared to be a synchronized dance routine in space. Though I believe we may need to create an entirely new form category, I don't believe we have one for accidental dance party first contact scenarios. Yet, O'Neill added with a grin, we don't have one yet. 6 months after the infamous quantum dance party incident, the joint human Exorian space station organized chaos hung in orbit around Earth like a bizarre architectural compromise. One half featured the precise geometric patterns favored by Exorian design, while the other displayed the more practical human approach. The center section, where the two styles met, looked like what might happen if M.C. Escher had decided to design a disco. Captain Sarah Chen stood at the observation window of her office, watching a quantum drift ship phase in and out of reality as it practiced what they insisted was a new form of interpretive dance. Next to her, Grand Executor Vaxthalion was attempting to explain the concept of coffee breaks to a group of visiting dignitaries from yet another recently contacted species. You mean to tell us, the jellyfish-like ambassador of the Hydrosapiens bubbled through their translator, that humans regularly consume a bitter stimulant beverage, and the Exorians have officially sanctioned this practice. Not only sanctioned it, Vaxthalion replied with what Sarah recognized as pride, but we've integrated it into our official productivity matrices. It turns out that regular intervals of caffeine-fueled informal social interaction increase efficiency by 47.3%. Though maybe we shouldn't mention the great coffee machine incident of last Tuesday, Sarah suggested diplomatically. Ah yes, Vaxthalion agreed. We're still trying to explain to the accounting department how the break room ended up temporarily existing last Wednesday. The Hydrosapient ambassador's tentacles rippled in what might have been confusion or amusement. Xenobiologists were still working on that distinction. And this is normal now. Define normal, Commander O'Neill said as he entered the office, carrying what appeared to be a stack of both traditional paper forms and holographic data crystals. We just had to create a new interdepartmental committee to handle meme exchange regulations between species, and the quantum drift is insisting we need better classification systems for VIVs. Speaking of regulations, Hicks added, materializing from behind a particularly tall stack of paperwork, we've finally completed the official documentation for last month's karaoke night incident. I still maintain that teaching the quantum drift Bohemian Rhapsody was not technically a violation of any existing protocols, O'Neill defended. Perhaps not, Hicks conceded, but their multi-dimensional interpretation of the Fandango section did temporarily alter the fabric of reality in 3 sectors. Worth it, Sarah and Vaxthalion said simultaneously, then shared a knowing look. The station's general announcement system chimed softly. Attention all personnel. Movie night will begin in 15 minutes. Tonight's feature is a cultural exchange presentation combining Earth's Star Wars with Exorian interpretative bureaucratic dance and quantum drift temporal harmonics. Viewer discretion is advised. Side effects may include temporary phase shifting and an increased appreciation for both paperwork and space wizards. You know, Sarah mused as they watched various species begin to make their way toward the station's entertainment sector. When I first joined the Earth exploration fleet, I never imagined that my job would involve managing interspecies karaoke competitions or filing reports about dance-based first contact protocols. And I, Vaxthalion added, never imagined I would find myself explaining to the Imperial Council why we needed to allocate resources for something called a mean development department. Yet here we are. Change is good, the hydrocipient ambassador observed, their tentacles forming what the cynobiologists had tentatively classified as a thoughtful spiral. Though we are curious, what's next for this unusual alliance of yours? As if in answer, a junior human officer burst into the office, slightly out of breath. Captain, Grand Executor, you need to see this. They followed the officer to the station's main control center, where a holographic display showed what appeared to be a new type of spacecraft approaching the station. Its design somehow managed to incorporate elements of human practicality, Axorian precision, and quantum drift reality-bending aesthetics all at once. Is that? Sarah began. The prototype, Vaxthalion confirmed. The first jointly developed vessel of the new combined fleet. The humans provided the innovative drive system, we provided the organizational structure and computational systems, and the quantum drift. Well, they provided whatever it is they provided. Good vibes, O'Neill supplied helpfully. According to the paperwork, anyway. We're calling it the bureaucratic innovation, Kix announced, somehow managing to make even the ship's name sound like it needed to be filed in triplicate. Though the human engineering team has already nicknamed it the party boat. As they watched the new ship execute a perfect series of maneuvers that somehow also resembled a dance routine, Sarah reflected on how far they'd come. What had started as an awkward first contact between a bureaucratic empire and a species that treated physics like a suggestion had evolved into something entirely new. A combination of order and chaos, efficiency and creativity, paperwork and pizza parties. You realize, she said to Vaxthalion, that we're probably going to have to explain this to even more new species as we expand further into the galaxy. Indeed, he replied, his 4 eyes twinkling with what she now recognized as mischief. I've already prepared 17 different standardized forms for explaining why everything is like this now. Though perhaps we should wait to tell them about the integrated dance floor in the new ship's engine room. Probably wise. Sarah agreed. Some things you just have to experience for yourself. As if to punctuate her words, the bureaucratic innovation executed one final flourish that briefly caused it to exist in 3 time periods simultaneously, then settled into a perfect parking orbit as Earth's sun set behind it, creating a light show that would have put any disco to shame. In the end, it turned out that the galaxy wasn't just ready for humanity's chaos or Axorian order. It was ready for both, mixed together with a healthy dose of higher dimensional dance moves and properly filed paperwork. And somehow, that made perfect sense in its own wonderfully absurd way.